Hi guys, today I'm going to be doing my January reading wrap up. So these are all the books that I have read so far this year. And there's a lot of them because I go through this phase at the start of the year where I feel like I have to read everything because I haven't read anything. And so I feel like I've just got to read all the books. The first half of the month was basically just spent reading. I can't think of anything better. So the book I started the year off reading was The Storm by Virginia Bergin, which is the sequel to The Rain, which I think was the first book I read back in, I think it must have been 2014, which seems like such a long time ago now. So I thought I would kind of repeat the pattern and read the sequel, and I loved this so much. I wish I'd read it sooner because it's so good. If you don't know, the premise of this duology is that there is a asteroid that goes over Earth and spreads all this bacteria which infects the water system, and so if you touch water you will die. And the main character Ruby is caught up in this. It's one of the most realistic apocalyptic books I've read because she really does react in a way that any teenager would, or any teenager I know would. She's not kick-ass in the way that some heroines are. She is just living every day as best as she can, and some of the situations she gets in are hilarious, and she has such a brilliant voice. It was a perfect ending to the duology. I was so happy with how it ended and so happy with how this book was written. I would highly recommend this duology. I think it's seriously underrated. So I really loved this and gave it 5 stars. I couldn't give it any less. After that I read another sequel because I just decided I was going to binge read all the sequels that I needed to read, and the second book I read was Red Witch by Anna McKerrow, which is the sequel to Crow Moon, which was one of my favourite books of 2015. It follows a different protagonist this time. This is Mel's story, so if you've read Crow Moon you'll know who that is, and in this we get to see so much more of the world that Crow Moon set up. So the main premise of this series is that the Earth is in crisis, oil reserves are low, which means that there are wars going on all over the globe, and in the UK Devon and Cornwall have been split up from the rest of the country and is called the Green World. The rest of the world is referred to as the Red World, and the Green World is all about eco-living, being friendly to the earth and living alongside nature, which I really love. I love those types of books. They're some of my favourite things to read about. So I loved Red Witch. I loved how you got to see so much more of what was going on. It wasn't just set in the Green World, you also get to see the Red World. And also I loved how it did the romance in here. If you've read it you'll know what I mean, and I'm not going to give anything away about that, but it was very different and very unexpected, so I really loved it. I gave it 5 stars again. It was a great start to the year. A lot of these books are 5 stars because I loved them so much. After that I read Wing Jones by Katherine Webber. I love this. It's another 5-star book because it was incredible. I read this in the space of a few days. Also, just look at these gorgeous sprayed edges. You need to buy it just for these sprayed edges. This is such a beautiful book, inside and out. Katherine Webber is an amazing writer. This is the story of a girl called Wing who lives in Atlanta in the 1990s, and her family experiences a real tragedy that means that Wing is a bit lost, and so she takes up running. She discovers that she is an amazing runner. She's very gifted at it, and it's something that really takes her mind off the things that are going on in her life. But there's also a touch of magical realism going on in this book. Wing has a dragon and a lion, and you're not really sure if they're real, you're not really sure if she's imagining them, and I liked that because I usually get put off by magical realism. I think this isn't realistic at all, but I thought it was a very realistic magical realism plot, and so I really enjoyed that. It doesn't take over, it's not the main thing that's going on, but it was just there in the background and it was very nice. The standout thing for me though is the way that Katherine writes. She is so lyrical, so metaphorical in the way that she writes, and I don't think I've seen that kind of style in YA before, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what she writes in the future because I gobbled up every single word. I could not put it down, and the way that you read it, because it's so lyrical, is a way that you just want to keep reading on and on. You eat up every single word because every single word counts. So it wasn't just about the story in this, it was also about the way it was written. So Katherine, I commend you because it was amazing, and I've got a full review of this up on my blog, so I'll leave a link in the description. Then I read another sequel which I was so excited to read, and it is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. But the main problem I have with this book is that it's the last one and I do not want it to end. I never want to let these characters go because they are so amazing. It is the sequel to Six of Crows, which I read back in December. I really loved it, but I loved this one even more. We kind of get this sense of the whole of the Grisha world coming together in this one because we see some of the characters that were in the original trilogy, which I haven't read yet, but I still got those references. I don't think it's absolutely necessary that you read the first 3 books because I didn't. I just had some clue about the characters, but it doesn't detract from the story in any way if you haven't read the original 3 books. I've talked about the characters quite a bit because they are amazing. My favourite character is Nina. I want to marry her. I love all the other characters too, and we really get to see more of them and their backstories. I thought it was ended really well, but I also thought there are still a few things that could be made into a future Grisha related book. So I'm really excited about that because I feel like it's gonna happen. It has to happen. I need more of these characters. After that, a recommendation of Anna James and Louise O'Neill, whose book recommendations I absolutely trust 100%. I read Trainwreck by Sady Doyle, which is a look at women that we kind of hate or villainize in history and in fiction, and how that sometimes that look isn't always the best thing, and how we look at them as train wrecks, but really they're just human. I thought this was particularly relevant because there is a section on Hillary Clinton, which was interesting to read. Now that the election is over, I thought that was a nice bit to look at. Well, not nice because obvious reasons, but it was really interesting to look at her and how she has been quite villainized throughout the years. My favourite section was the one about Charlotte Bronte for obvious reasons because I love the Brontes so much, but there are some really fascinating women in here that I think you should read about because you learn so much more about them and you look on them in a different light. And I want to talk about how amazing this book is, but I really think you need to read it for yourself to find out just how good it is. So I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. I then read another YA book, which was This Beats Perfect by Rebecca Denton. This comes out this month and it's so good. It is all about a boy band, but it doesn't feel like a boy band book. It follows a girl called Amie, whose dad is a big part of the music industry, and so she goes backstage at a boy band concert and meets some of the members of the band, and it's all about their struggles, but also Amie making it as an artist herself and coming into her own, and I really liked that stance on it. I'm gonna have a full review up on my blog of this very soon, so I'm not gonna talk about it too much, but I will say that I would highly recommend it. I thought it was written really well, and I think that Rebecca Denton is really a talent to watch out for, and you can really tell that she knows her way around the music industry too. She just wrote this perfectly. It is definitely perfect. After that, I read a few ebooks, and the first one I read was Hello Me, It's You by Hannah Todd, which is an anthology that has been put together all about mental health. I liked how it gave a voice to people who have mental illnesses and how it explored a range of different ones. So I would say that it could be triggering, and it's hard to say what will trigger you because there's so much going on in it. I didn't think it was the best because after the first few letters you kind of get the gist of what everyone is trying to say, and so I thought it could have just concentrated on a few people rather than lots and lots of people, but I get the point of trying to include a lot of different voices. But when people start having the same kinds of experiences and the same kinds of illnesses, then you just get a lot of the same. I would like to see this actually traditionally published. I thought it would work really well because it was originally written as a university project, which has now been self-published. And I think with a proper editing job behind it and scrutinising some of the letters closely to see which ones should be included and which could maybe be cut, then it could be really good. I gave it about 3.5 to 4 stars, somewhere in between. After that, I read another boy band related book which I've been meaning to read for ages, which is Songs About a Girl by Chris Russell. I loved this one. I thought it was so good. I read it really quickly. It is about a girl who was contacted by a member of the Light Years, which is a band that has blown up because one of the members used to go to the same school as her and he wants her to take some photographs of the band. So she gets to go backstage at their concerts and see them behind the scenes, and I loved how they all fit together, how they all had very different personalities, because I think with boy band books sometimes you just get one member, but I thought this looked at all of them as a group and those group dynamics really well. There's also really nice romance, which I'm looking forward to seeing how that progresses in the sequel, so I highly recommend this. It's one of those really feel-good books that also has some low moments thrown in, and I definitely came away from it desperate to read the sequel, which comes out this summer. So Songs About a Girl comes highly recommended from me. I gave it 4.5 stars. Then I read Doing It by Hannah Witton, which I really enjoyed. I read it in an afternoon because I couldn't put it down. It's a really easy book to read, but also really informative too. But my favourite thing about it by far was that Hannah talks about a lot of different things, but she doesn't profess to know everything, so she has a lot of people coming in to write different sections, different own voices sections, so she doesn't just lay out the facts, she also uses real people to demonstrate that there are real people living with things. And I think it'll be a really big help to anyone who is maybe a bit afraid to talk about things to do with sex but wants to find out more and wants to do it in a very safe space. So I thought that was a great thing about it. So I gave this one 4 stars. It was really informative, really great. Then I read Everything Leads to You by Nina LaCour, which I've been wanting to read for ages. I wasn't really impressed by it. My expectations were probably a bit too high, but I gave it 4 stars because it was still very good. It's about a teenage girl called Amie who is involved with the film business. She decorates film sets, and one day she goes to this house sale and finds a letter from a deceased famous movie star that sends her on this quest, and there's also some romance thrown in. It's really nice to see a girl romance in a book that was just really natural. It wasn't a coming out story, it was just what it was, and so I really liked that side of it. I'll definitely read more from Nina LaCour in the future, but I'm not sure if this was exactly what I was expecting, and I'm not sure if it was exactly what I want my contemporary stories to be like. It just didn't have the right feel for me. I like my contemporaries to have a real warm, fuzzy feel, and I didn't quite get that because I didn't feel very close to the main character, but it was still very good and I would still really recommend it. After that I read a contemporary book that did fill me with that warm, fuzzy feeling, and it was One Italian Summer by Keris Stainton, which I think comes out in May, and it is about a girl and her sisters. It really explores this sisterly relationship and how close they are, and it is after the death of their father, who is a really big figure in their life, and so it's all about grief. But I think the thing I liked about this is that I didn't feel like it was falling into the dead parent trope. It felt like a very natural story, and I especially liked how Keris balanced that grief and the story. The grief part doesn't take over the whole story, but it's still present, and you get this other plot as well. So you get this really nice romance that was a really cute summer romance. It was so good, and I think Keris is just an amazing writer. I love her stuff so much, and I can definitely see myself recommending this over the summer. It's one of those books that you can pop in your beach bag and read in the sun, and it just did fill me with that warm, fuzzy, contemporary feeling that I love. I loved it and I gave it 5 stars. It is definitely a standout summer read. The second to last book I read in January was 7 Days of You by Cecilia Vinesse, which is a book set in Japan, which I loved. I love books that are set in other countries because you really get that culture, but this is also not told by Japanese characters. They are embassy kids and teenagers that are studying in an international school, so they mainly speak English there, and you get all these different cultures. I could not put this down. I started it in the evening, I finished it in one sitting because I loved it so much. Cecilia Vinesse is a really talented writer, and I am so pleased that I read this book. It's a book that I still haven't forgotten. I can see myself rereading lots in the future. It's about main character Sophia, who has 7 days left in Tokyo before she moves back to the United States, and so she's trying to make the most of this. She's trying to say goodbye to her friends who she really doesn't want to leave, but also somebody else comes back into her life that left a long time ago, so they're kind of overlapping. One is coming back, one is leaving, and there's also a really nice romance which I loved. I thought it was adorable and really done realistically and done well. It's the kind of romance that is based on friendship first, romance second, and I love romances that are like that, so I really loved it. I would highly recommend it. I gave it 5 stars because I could not put this down. And then the final book I read in January was a major disappointment, and I did not finish it, and it was Illuminae by Amie Kaufman and Kristoff. Although it sounds good in principle, there was so much info dumping that I could not deal with it. I was like, I just want to get to know the world, but I don't want you to tell me every single thing that's happened and not let me discover it for myself. I was getting so frustrated, so I just didn't finish it. I did not finish it, and I have no regrets, to be honest. It looks good in principle. It's quite an innovative way of telling a story. didn't like it, was not for me, and I won't be continuing on with the story. No stars for Illuminae. So that was my January reading wrap up. Let me know in the comments what you read in January. What was your favourite book? What was your least favourite book? So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. Happy reading!